I'm past laughing at this now.
That would be a crime, though, if there was no Brexit.
I am past laughing at this because it's up to the members of Parliament on both sides of the House to actually come out and tell the British people that Brexit is going to be one almighty disaster. And nobody seems in the House of Commons, well, very few, Anna Soubry for one, who is prepared to say it, but very few others, because Donald Tusk has actually said what a lot of people are thinking. He said it in a very colourful way and very entertaining, because we cannot just have a yes-no answer to whether we'd like to leave Europe or not. It's far more complicated than that. How are we going to get out of this mess?
Yeah, well, I completely agree. I mean, people who voted leave voted in good faith for good things, for more money, more trade, more jobs, more control over immigration. The fact is, they're not going to get any of those things. They suddenly found out we'll have to pay $40 billion, the economy will be 10% down, we won't be able to do trade deals with the power and leverage of the EU, we won't control immigration, which is coming across Northern Ireland, we won't even control our own jobs. If we end up under the wing of the WTO, we'll have even less control and power than we do in the EU.
Well, let me guarantee
really,
that. I think we need to...
It really is a farce.
Yeah.
And so therefore...
Geraint, just before we go on, let me stop you there. Lots of people still think, and there doesn't seem to be any way of getting through to a lot of people, that the WTO rules are not going to be a panacea for everything. And I keep hearing some MPs say, oh, we already trade under WTO rules with some countries. You know, it is not, we can't just suddenly swap to them, can we?
No, well, precisely. In fact, the WTO's got its own Council of Ministers with 160 members instead of 28. Many of them are dictatorships. We'd only have one vote. It wouldn't be proportionate to our population as it is with the EU. It's then run by its own commission, which is much bigger than the EU Commission, with less appointees from us. And it's enforced by a panel of judges who can overrule our courts. So it will have much less control, much less sovereignty, and it's just simply a lie.
Yeah. Why wasn't this actually explained during the referendum?
Well, I mean, the referendum was ridiculously simplistic. What we should have done, of course, is to say, OK, you have a chance to leave the EU. That's fine. This is what we're claiming. This is the levers you'll get. But then there should be a vote on whether the exit deal actually reasonably represents what you were promised. I mean, if you ordered, I don't know, something from Amazon, like a mobile phone that said it could do colour photos, and it came back to the post and only did black and white, you should have the right to send it back or say, fair enough, I'll have this phone. And that's what people want. They're not getting what they ordered, and they should have the right to send it back.
Well, how difficult is it for members of the House of Commons to actually start telling the truth and start trying to communicate with people who have got the wrong end of the stick purely because of some of the rubbish that has come out of the mouths of people like, I'm sorry, I like him, he's quite funny, Jacob Rees-Mogg has talked rubbish, so has Boris Johnson, so is Mr. Redwood and various others, and quite a few Labour MPs as well who are concerned because in their constituencies they all want to leave. How do we do this now?
Well, it's like the Pied Piper, isn't it? I mean, in terms of my own position, a week after the referendum, I put down a private bill called the EU Terms of Withdrawal referendum bill. It basically said we should have a vote on the exit deal. And basically said, look, people have been made these promises. They should have the final say on whether what they eventually get represents their reasonable expectations. And clearly it doesn't. And more people, certainly in the public, are saying that, without much political leadership, it's got to be said. And they're coming around to the idea, well, hold on, this isn't what we ordered, and we're actually better off where we are. And then a whole new set of lies is coming out, like if people have been told, oh, well, everyone voted and they knew they'd be worse off and they knew they'd leave the single market and all this sort of stuff. I mean, the latest thing I raised today was the fact that, it's a small point perhaps, but, 1 in 8 psychiatrists are basically qualified in the EU, and there's 1 in 7 of our children, right, who've got mental health disorders. So, of course, as we get more unemployment and less physicians and more mental health problems, things will get worse. Well, parents didn't vote for that, did they?
No, and a number of people that I know, probably a couple of them getting ready to listen to us in the bath at the moment, I would imagine, who voted Brexit because they thought it was rather entertaining and just thought they'd shake things up a little bit.
No, exactly, they did, and obviously, parliamentary democracy is supposed to be about people listening to the public, but also spending their time to do what's in their constituents' interests. And locally, with me in Swansea West, Swansea Bay, we've got 25,000 people who are employed in sending things by export to the EU. And my responsibility is to them, not just because Swansea overall voted and majority voted to leave. And you've got to look at the facts and see if it fits.
Well, you're quite a brave man. Now, my producer's Welsh. Phil is Welsh. She's from
Congratulations.
Tonopandi. My mother was from Rumney. And yet Wales voted to leave. Yeah.
And now the Welsh government is saying they don't want to leave, and the majority of Welsh people are saying they don't want to leave because obviously people have woken up to the fact that Wales gets billions of pounds of convergence funding, and our environmental laws and all sorts of bits of investment and rights are underpinned by the EU.
But there are very few places in Wales, Geraint, that I can think of, that I have seen, where when they've got investment from the EU before, they've made a big thing about it. Because we've never done it anywhere in this country. If you go to France or Germany, others, when they've got sort of money from the EU to do things, they put up a plaque and they fly the European flag alongside their own flag. We've never done that here.
No, exactly. The EU is the great unsung hero. And in Swansea's hands, there's a massive development doubling the size of the Swansea University, funded by the EU. And I said, well, there is a little plaque somewhere, but not many people know about this. And once they found out, people are now realising what a good deal we do get from the EU. A lot of people say to me, oh, no, we don't need another referendum because we need to forward offer something new to say about the EU. Well, the thing to say about the EU is what people are discovering, namely that, their workers' rights, their guaranteed holidays, their environmental protection, as well as their jobs are underpinned by the EU.
We see some of my colleagues here on Talk Radio, like Julia Hartley-Brewer and Dan Wootton and, staunch Brexiteers, quite a lot of them in the media, lots
Amazing.
of journalists. And I'm sure they're doing it just to wind it up. I find it far easier to wind people up this way round, to be quite honest with you, because the alternative is that the economy of this country is going to go down and down and down. And people say, no, it's not. Look at it. We haven't left yet. We're benefiting from the pound sinking. And nobody seems to be able to grasp this.
Anyone running a business is basically saying, oh, OK, we've got tariffs around the corner and we've got a low pound in the meantime, so we'll use our own machinery to max out on a production, sell cheap. Then once we Brexit, we won't have any investment in new kit, and the prices will go up due to tariffs and people will be throwing out their jobs. Meanwhile, we've got 2 years of transition, so big operators can literally leave our shores. So we've got Airbus and Nissan deciding to produce elsewhere, other manufacturers basically hedging their bets and moving out.
Are you not concerned about your own job, Geraint? Because, your constituency were leavers. The next general election may not be too far away. You might have to find another job.
Yeah, well, obviously we all take risks, and the risk I took in 2017 was to talk straight to the Swansea West constituents and say, look, I will back. I will vote to ensure minimally that we remain in the single market and to fight for people to have the final say on the deal. My vote went up 50% to 60% of the vote. It's the highest Labour vote ever in Swansea West, higher than 1945 and 1997 when we had Labour governments, because the people listen. And the idea that people have voted Brexit in 2016 and therefore they're going to continuously, mindlessly vote for it, irrespective of the facts and how they change, is simply wrong. We should give credit to the public and let them decide whether the deal represents the promises that were made by the charlatans. I'm confident they won't. They will say it.
The problem is that the Brexiteers shout a lot louder. They don't seem to have many shouters on the other side, which I think is a little sad. Listen, Geraint, Go on.
I think that's completely right. I mean, there's all these people, on the Remain side, oh no, on the one side had this, on the other side that, and all the rest of it. But the facts are plain, and people are saying things like, oh no, we can't have a public vote on the deal because there will be, social incohesion or whatever, or people will be angry. But I tell you this, if we don't have a vote and we have Brexit, they won't be angry, they'll be enraged, they'll be on the streets. People didn't vote leave to leave their jobs, or all these other implications. So we need to get a grip of this. Otherwise, we'll set in train, some horror of social division as well as basically poverty and isolation. But otherwise, it's all good.
Geraint, thank you very much indeed. Give our love to Bonnie Tyler next time you pass a house in Swansea. Thank you very much indeed for that. Geraint Davies, member of the European Scrutiny Committee. They're doing the European Union with a big